Some women dream of meeting a dangerous man. Alana Rodriguez never got the choice. When her father's debt landed her in a contract marriage to Seoul's most feared crime lord, she thought she'd survive 3 years and walk away. She was wrong on both counts. Kang Ji-ho didn't believe in love until he saw her. And once he decided she was his, he'd do anything to keep her, manipulate her father's debt, control her every move, burn down anyone who looked at her too long. But obsession is a blade that cuts both ways. Because somewhere between the forced vows and the possessive touches, between the jealous rages and the protective fury, Alana made a fatal mistake. She fell for the man who'd bought her. This is a story about a contract written in blood and rewritten in love, about a monster who became a man, about a prisoner who became a queen, and about the moment when your body is mine became your heart is everything. If you're ready for a dark, dangerous, devastating love story that breaks every rule, subscribe now, because you've never seen obsession like this. Now let me show you how it all began. Alana's hand wouldn't stop shaking. She gripped her knee under the table, nails biting into skin through her jeans, trying to force stillness into her body. The contract sat on the mahogany desk like a coiled snake, its pages crisp and white against the dark wood. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 40th floor office, Seoul glittered below, beautiful and indifferent to the transaction happening in this leather and smoke-scented room. 2 days ago, she'd flown home to Miami to visit her father for the week, a break from her research in Seoul. That's when the men in black suits appeared at his door. Polite, professional, terrifying. They'd known everything, her program, her advisor, the exact hanok she rented in Bukchon. They'd handed her a plane ticket back to Seoul and an address in Gangnam. "Mr. Kang will explain your father's situation," they'd said, and the way they emphasized situation made it clear this wasn't a request. Now she understood. This wasn't an explanation. It was a sentencing. Her father's broken sobs filled the silence. "I'm sorry, mija," Carlos Rodriguez whispered for what felt like the 100th time, his weathered hands covering his face. "I'm so sorry." Alana wanted to scream at him, wanted to ask how many poker hands it took to destroy a life, how many desperate bets at underground tables in Miami, feeding into organizations he couldn't comprehend. But the man sitting across from her commanded her attention like gravity, impossible to ignore. Kang Ji-ho looked nothing like a crime lord, no scars marring his skin, no visible weapons, no theatrical menace. He wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than her entire graduate program. His black hair fell with careless precision across his forehead, like he'd run his hands through it once and let it fall where it pleased. But his eyes, dark as Seoul's midnight sky, held something ancient and hungry as they tracked her every microscopic movement, the way a wolf watches a rabbit that's wandered too far from safety. "You're a PhD student," Ji-ho said, his English flawless but flavored with an accent that made even simple words sound like threats. Each syllable was deliberate, controlled. "Cultural anthropology. You've spent 3 months documenting traditional Korean wedding ceremonies for your dissertation." He leaned forward and the city lights cast shadows across his angular face. "Ironic, isn't it, that you'll now be starring in one?" Alana's spine stiffened. I know everything about you, Alana." The way he said her name, rolling the syllables with deliberate slowness, made her skin prickle with something that wasn't entirely fear. "Your favorite cafe in Bukchon, the one with the elderly owner who teaches you Korean phrases. How you take your makgeolli, warm with a slice of pear. The exact spot in Cheongdeokgung Palace where you sit to edit your field notes every Thursday at 3. Her breath caught. Thursdays at 3. She'd never told anyone about that. "I know you bite your bottom lip when you're nervous," he continued, his gaze dropping to her mouth, "like you're doing right now." She released her lip immediately, tasting blood. "I also know you visited your mother's grave in Barcelona before coming to Seoul. You laid white roses. You cried for 20 minutes in the rain." His eyes never left hers. "You thought you were alone." Ice flooded Alana's veins. He'd been watching her for months, not weeks. months, across continents. The terms are simple, Jiho said, sliding the contract toward her with 2 fingers. The paper whispered against wood. 3 years as my wife. Your body belongs to me during that time. For public appearances, social functions, and whatever else I require. You'll live in my penthouse, accompany me to every event, and play the role of devoted spouse convincingly. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the distance between them. In return, your father's debt disappears. He keeps his life, what remains of his dignity, and you both walk away when the contract expires. And if I refuse? Alana forced the words past the tightness in her throat. Jiho's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then I collect from your father in the traditional way. The Busan port is particularly cold this time of year. Bodies don't surface for weeks, and when they do... He shrugged, the gesture elegant and horrifying. Well, fish need to eat too. Carlos made a wounded animal sound. You're a monster, Alana said, her voice shaking with fury instead of fear. Good. Anger she could use. Anger gave her strength. Yes. Jiho's agreement came immediately, almost casual, like she'd commented on the weather. But I'm a monster offering you a choice. Sign the contract and your father lives. You complete your dissertation, publish your research, build the academic career you've worked toward, all while playing house with me, 3 years of your life for his. That's not a bad trade. That's not a choice. That's extortion. Semantics. He produced a fountain pen from his jacket. Elegant, expensive, the kind used for signing things that mattered. Setting it beside the contract, he added, but I'll give you credit for spirit. Most women would be crying by now. I'm not most women. Something flickered in his expression, interest maybe, or satisfaction, like she'd passed a test she didn't know she was taking. No, you're not. That's precisely why you're here. The statement hung between them, loaded with implications Alana didn't want to examine. She thought of her mother's grave in Barcelona, the white roses she'd left before flying to Seoul. Her abuela's voice echoed across the years. Rodriguez women protect our families, mija. Always. Her throat tightened. Mama would have taken this deal in a heartbeat, would have signed away 30 years, not 3, to save the people she loved. But first, I want to add a clause, Alana said, meeting his gaze directly. I get to finish my dissertation. You don't interfere with my research, my writing, or my academic career. And when the 3 years end, you help me get a position at whatever university I choose. Jiho's eyebrow lifted. Negotiating? You said my body belongs to you. Fine, but my mind is mine. My work is mine. That's non-negotiable. For the first time, his smile looked genuine. Pleased. Done. I'll add it to the contract now. He produced his phone, typed something rapidly, and within seconds, a printer hummed to life in the corner. A revised contract emerged. He brought it to the desk, the new clause highlighted in yellow. Anything else? She hesitated, then pushed. I want my own space, a room in your penthouse that's just mine. You don't enter without permission. No. Then I don't sign. They stared at each other, and Alana felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. Behind them, her father held his breath. Finally, Jiho nodded. 1 room. But understand, Alana, everywhere else in my home, you're mine. The kitchen, the living room, my bedroom. His emphasis on the last 2 words sent heat crawling up her neck. You'll spend most of your time in my space, not yours. We'll see. Her hand reached for the pen. Wait. Jiho's fingers closed around her wrist, stopping her. His grip was firm but strangely gentle, his skin warm against hers. She felt her pulse jump, not just from fear, something else. Something that made her want to pull away and lean closer at the same time. His thumb pressed against the inside of her wrist, feeling her racing heartbeat. The intimate gesture felt more invasive than anything else he'd done. Nervous? Furious, she corrected, hating how breathless she sounded. His eyes darkened with something that looked dangerously close to desire. Good. Fear is boring. Fury is... He paused, his thumb still moving in small circles against her pulse point. Intoxicating. She jerked her hand away. Are we done posturing, or should I expect more dramatic villain speeches? He laughed, actual genuine laughter that transformed his face into something almost beautiful, almost human. I like you, Alana Rodriguez. This is going to be interesting. I'm so glad my suffering entertains you. Oh, I promise you'll suffer, he said, and the threat wrapped around her like silk, but not in the ways you're imagining. Before she could decipher that, he released her and stepped back. Professional distance restored. Sign. Before I change my mind about your negotiations. Alana picked up the pen, its weight solid in her palm. She thought of 3 years. She thought of her father's life. She thought of her mother and abuela and all the Rodriguez women who'd made impossible choices to protect what they loved. She signed her name in bold strokes, Alana Maria Rodriguez, watching the ink dry like blood on paper. Across from her, Jiho added his signature with practiced elegance. His handwriting was beautiful, she noticed, controlled, like everything else about him. "Welcome to your new life, wife," he said, and the words sounded like a promise and a threat wrapped in silk. He stood, buttoning his jacket with casual precision that spoke of decades of wealth. "The wedding is in 3 days. I've already chosen your handbook, white and red, traditional. You'll look beautiful in it." His smile was razor sharp. "After all, I want everyone to see exactly what I've claimed." As he extended his hand to help her stand, Alana saw it, the flash of something dark and possessive in his eyes when she'd said her heart would never be his. He didn't look disappointed. He looked challenged, like she'd just made this a game he intended to win. The wedding happened so fast, Alana barely remembered agreeing to it. 3 days. Jiho had given her 3 days to pack up her hanok in Bukchon, to email her dissertation advisor with a vague excuse about family emergency requiring immediate attention, to ignore the concerned texts from the 2 friends in her PhD program who couldn't understand why she was suddenly unavailable. 3 days to say goodbye to the life she'd built in Seoul, the independent life where she was Alana Rodriguez, researcher and scholar, not Alana Kang, purchased wife. Her father wasn't at the wedding. Jiho had suggested he remain in Miami until the debt was formally cleared, which meant Alana walked into this alone, without even a familiar face for comfort. Just her and the man who'd bought her, surrounded by strangers who looked at her like a curiosity or a threat. Now she stood in a private room at the Shilla Hotel, staring at her reflection in a full-length mirror, while 2 Korean women she'd never met fastened the traditional handbook around her body with practiced efficiency. The white silk felt like a shroud. The red embroidery, cranes and flowers symbolizing eternal love, mocked her with their beauty. Nothing like the passionate, colorful celebrations she'd grown up with. No salsa, no tostones, no abuela's voice leading prayers. Just silence and ritual and ownership. One of the women, the older one with kind eyes and silver threading through her dark hair, noticed Alana's hands shaking. She paused, then gently took Alana's hand and squeezed it. "Nervous?" she asked in halting English. Alana's throat tightened. Terrified. The woman smiled sadly, warmly. "First wedding always scary, but Mr. Kang..." She seemed to search for words, then touched her own heart. "He watches you like you are moon. Very rare. This is good thing." Alana wanted to laugh, or cry, or both. This woman thought Jiho loved her, thought this was real, romantic, beautiful. If only she knew the truth, that the groom had manufactured every circumstance that led to this moment. "Thank you," Alana managed, because kindness deserved kindness, even in a nightmare. "Beautiful," the younger woman murmured, adjusting the bow at Alana's chest one final time. "Mr. Kang chose well." The door opened without warning. Jiho stepped inside, and both women immediately bowed and scurried out, leaving them alone. He looked devastating. His handbok was black and deep crimson, traditional but tailored to fit his broad shoulders with perfect precision. His hair was styled back from his face, revealing the sharp lines of his cheekbones, the intensity of his dark eyes as they traveled over her slowly, possessively, like he was cataloging everything he now owned. "Perfect," he said, and the word felt like a brand. "You look exactly like a Kang should." A prisoner in expensive silk? His mouth curved. My wife. He crossed to her in 3 strides, and suddenly the room felt too small, the air too thick. He smelled like cedar and something darker. Smoke, maybe, or danger distilled into scent. His hand lifted to her face, fingers tracing the line of her jaw with unexpected gentleness that made her skin prickle. Smile, he said softly. We have an audience waiting, and they need to believe you're not here against your will. But I am. Then lie better. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and she hated how her breath caught. Because if anyone suspects this isn't real, if anyone thinks you're here under duress, questions will be asked. Investigations opened, and your father... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Alana pulled back from his touch, her jaw tight. Fine, I'll smile, I'll play the devoted wife, but don't expect me to enjoy it. Oh, I don't expect you to enjoy it. His voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that made her pulse jump. But you will, eventually. Before she could respond, he took her hand, warm, firm, inescapable, and led her toward the door. The ceremony blurred together like a fever dream. Traditional vows spoken, in Korean, translated for her by an officiant who avoided her eyes. The words felt foreign in her mouth, nothing like the passionate Spanish promises she'd heard at her cousin's wedding in Miami last year. The exchange of cups, the bowing to elders she'd never met and would likely never see again. Jiho's hand never left hers, his touch a constant reminder of ownership. When the officiant declared them married, Jiho pulled her close and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was claiming, branding, a statement to everyone watching that she belonged to him now. His hand cupped the back of her neck, holding her in place while his mouth moved over hers with practiced skill. Alana kept her lips pressed together, refusing to respond, refusing to give him anything. But her body betrayed her. Heat flooded through her veins despite her mind screaming that this was wrong. This was her enemy. This was the man who'd bought her like property. Her breath hitched, her lips softened, and for one terrible moment she kissed him back. When he finally released her, his eyes were dark with satisfaction, and something else, something that looked dangerously like hunger. There, he murmured against her lips, quiet enough that only she could hear. Now everyone knows. The reception was elegant torture. Alana smiled until her face ached, playing the role Jiho demanded. Guests approached in waves, Seoul's elite in designer hanbok and custom suits, their congratulations dripping with barely concealed curiosity. Such an unusual choice, one older woman said in perfect English, her eyes traveling over Alana's dark skin with undisguised judgment. We didn't expect Mr. Kang to marry outside our circle. Before Alana could respond, Jiho's hand slid around her waist, pulling her flush against his side. The possessive gesture was deliberate, public, unmistakable. My wife is extraordinary, he said, his voice pleasant and absolutely deadly. I'm sure you can see why I'd choose her over anyone else available. The emphasis on anyone else made the woman's smile falter. She excused herself quickly. Another man approached, younger, sharp-suited, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He spoke to Jiho in rapid Korean, but Alana caught one word repeated twice, her name. The man's eyes flicked to her, cold and assessing, sliding over her body in a way that made her skin crawl. Jiho's hand tightened on her waist to the point of pain. He responded in Korean, his tone casual, almost pleasant, but the man's face drained of color. He bowed deeply and practically fled. What did you say? Alana demanded when they were alone again. He asked if you were worth the price I paid for your father's debt. Jiho's smile didn't reach his eyes. I told him if he ever speaks about you again, I'll remove his tongue. If he looks at you like that again, I'll blind him. He said it with the same tone he might use to discuss the weather. Some men need clear boundaries. Alana should have been horrified. Instead, something twisted and wrong in her chest felt almost protected. Hours later, when the last guest finally departed and hotel staff began cleaning up, Jiho led her to the car waiting outside. a sleek black sedan with windows so tinted the world outside disappeared completely. The drive to his penthouse was silent except for Seoul's nighttime traffic humming beyond the glass. Alana watched the city lights blur past, her heart hammering harder with each block they traveled. This was it, her new life, her cage. "You didn't eat anything at the reception," Jiho said quietly. She turned to find him watching her, and for just a moment, something that looked almost like concern crossed his features. "I wasn't hungry. You need to eat." He reached into a compartment, producing a small wooden box. Inside were carefully arranged pieces of fresh fruit, cut into perfect shapes. Korean pears, sliced thin, arranged like flowers, her favorite. The ones she ordered every Thursday at the cafe he'd mentioned knowing about. The gesture was so unexpectedly thoughtful it made her chest tighten with something she didn't want to name. "Why?" she asked. "Because you're mine to take care of now." His voice was quiet, almost soft, possessive in a different way than before, protective. "That includes making sure you eat." She stared at the fruit, at the evidence that he'd been paying attention, that his obsession extended to knowing what she liked, what she needed. It should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel something dangerously close to cared for. She took a piece of pear. It was perfect. Sweet, cold, exactly ripe. "Thank you," she said, and hated how genuine it sounded. His smile was small, satisfied, like she'd given him something valuable. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building in Cheongdam-dong, Seoul's wealthiest neighborhood. The elevator required a fingerprint scan that Jiho programmed with her thumb, his hands gentle as he pressed her finger to the reader. When the doors opened directly into his home, Alana's breath caught despite herself. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Han River, the city sprawling beyond like a galaxy of light. The interior was all clean lines and dark wood, expensive minimalism that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Modern Korean aesthetics mixed with hints of something older, a traditional scroll painting on one wall, ceramic vases that looked ancient and priceless. "Welcome home," Jiho said, shrugging out of his jacket and draping it over a chair with careless elegance. He loosened his collar, and Alana tried not to notice the strong lines of his throat, the way the silk of his hanbok shifted across his shoulders as he moved. "This isn't my home," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "It's yours. I'm just living in it." Semantics again. He poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter. "You should learn to accept reality, Alana. It'll make the next 3 years easier." "And what is reality?" He crossed to her, offering 1 glass. When she didn't take it, he set it on the side table and invaded her space instead, backing her against the window. The glass was cold against her back, the city lights 40 floors below making her dizzy with vertigo. "Reality," Jiho said, his voice low and dangerous, "is that you're mine now. You signed the contract. You took the vows. You kissed me in front of 200 witnesses." His hand came up to rest against the window beside her head, caging her in without touching her. "And tonight you'll sleep in my bed." Her heart stopped. "The contract says, your body belongs to me for appearances and whatever else I require. Sleeping in my bed is required." His eyes held hers, dark and unreadable. "But I'm not a monster, despite what you think. I won't touch you. Not tonight. Not until you ask me to." "I'll never ask." His smile was slow, predatory, certain. "We'll see about that, too." He stepped back, giving her space to breathe again. "Your room, the one you negotiated for, is down that hall, second door on the right. My room is at the end of the hall. The rest of the penthouse is ours to share." He picked up his glass, swirling the liquid thoughtfully. "But tonight, wife, you'll sleep beside me. Those are the rules. And if I refuse, then I'll carry you there myself." He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather, but his eyes promised he meant every word. "Your choice. Walk with dignity, or be carried like a child throwing a tantrum. Either way, you're sleeping in my bed tonight." Alana's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Every instinct screamed at her to fight, to run, to do something other than surrender. But she thought of her father, safe in Miami, thought of the contract, thought of 3 years stretching ahead like a prison sentence. She could survive one night. She'd survived worse. Fine, she said, lifting her chin in defiance even as she conceded. But don't expect me to make it comfortable for you. Jiho's laugh was low and rich, genuinely amused. Oh, I'm counting on you making it very uncomfortable. That's half the fun. He gestured toward the hallway with elegant cruelty. After you, Mrs. Kang, let me show you where you'll be spending your nights. Alana stood frozen in the hallway outside Jiho's bedroom, staring at the closed door like it might swallow her whole. Walk, Jiho said behind her, his voice patient but firm. Or be carried. Your choice, wife. Her hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed at her to fight, but she thought of her father, thought of 3 years, thought of survival. She lifted her chin and walked. His bedroom was massive, all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering nightscape. The bed dominated the space, and laid across it was a silk nightgown in deep emerald green. Someone had prepared for her arrival. He'd prepared for this. My housekeeper, Mrs. Choi, takes care of the penthouse, Jiho said, reading her expression. She's discreet and efficient. You'll meet her tomorrow. He gestured to an ensuite bathroom. Change. I'll give you privacy for that, at least. When she emerged 10 minutes later, face scrubbed clean and wearing the nightgown that felt like liquid against her skin, Jiho was already in bed. He'd stripped down to black sleep pants and a fitted t-shirt that revealed the lean muscle of his chest and arms. A vicious scar cut across his left shoulder. Old, raised evidence of violence survived. He lifted the covers in invitation. Come here. I can't. You can. His voice was steel wrapped in silk. And you will. I promised I wouldn't touch you without permission, and I'll keep that promise. But you'll sleep in this bed. That's non-negotiable. Alana climbed in stiffly, staying as far to her edge as physics allowed. The bed was big enough that a foot of space separated them, but it felt like inches. She could feel his heat, smell his scent, cedar and smoke and something uniquely him. Relax, he said into the darkness, amusement coloring his voice. I can hear you thinking from here. I can't, she admitted, hating the tremor in her voice. Then don't. But know this. I meant what I said. I won't touch you until you ask. And you will ask, Alana. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. Eventually, you'll beg. The arrogance of it should have made her furious. Instead, it made her shiver. She didn't sleep. Couldn't. She lay rigid for hours, hyper-aware of every breath he took, every shift of his body. Sometime near dawn, exhaustion finally pulled her under, only to wake what felt like minutes later to pale light filtering through the windows, and Jiho's hand, warm, deliberate, settling on her hip through the silk. Good morning, wife, he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. Alana jerked away, rolling to the edge of the bed. You said you wouldn't touch me. I said I wouldn't touch you that way without permission. His smile was lazy, dangerous as he propped himself up on one elbow. That was just a greeting, a reminder that you're in my bed, in my home, mine. He watched her reaction carefully. But if you want me to keep my hands completely off you, say so clearly, set the boundary. She wanted to. God, she wanted to draw that hard line. But something in his expression, the challenge, the certainty that she'd fail, made her hesitate. And they both knew hesitation was answer enough. Just not without warning, she finally said, wrapping her arms around herself. Fair. Jiho sat up fully, the sheets pooling around his waist. In the morning light, she could see more details, another scar along his ribs, the lean muscle of his chest and shoulders, the way he moved with predatory grace, even doing something as simple as stretching. We have a busy day. My family wants to meet you. Dinner tonight at my parents' home in Pyeongchang-dong. Alana's stomach dropped. Already? We just got married yesterday, I know. He stood, walking to his closet. But my mother has been calling non-stop since the wedding photos hit social media. My younger sister is dying of curiosity, and my father... Something dark crossed his features. Needs to see that I've secured my position. I'm not ready for this. You don't have a choice." He turned to face her, his expression softening slightly. Or maybe that was just the morning light playing tricks. "But I'll be with you the entire time, and despite what you think, I protect what's mine. That includes you now." "Secured your position," she repeated, latching onto his earlier words. "That's what I am. A political move?" "You're many things." Jiho pulled out clothes with efficient movements, a charcoal suit, crisp white shirt. "A political move, yes. A 3-year contract. An obsession I couldn't resist." His eyes met hers, intense and unreadable. "Which one bothers you most?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Because the truth was worse than any of those options, what bothered her most was that some traitorous part of her was starting to wonder which one was real, starting to hope it was the obsession, not the contract, and that terrified her more than anything else. "Get dressed," Jiho said when she didn't answer, gesturing toward the walk-in closet adjacent to his. "I had your things moved from your hanok yesterday. They're organized in there. Your clothes, your books, your research materials, and I bought additional pieces, Western and Korean options. Choose whatever makes you feel powerful." His smile was sharp. "You'll need it. My family doesn't play nice with outsiders." Alana found the closet, massive, with one entire section now filled with her possessions, alongside new designer pieces still bearing tags. Seeing her worn jeans next to $1,000 silk blouses felt surreal, like two lives colliding. She chose a cream silk blouse and tailored black pants, Western, professional, armor. Pulled her braids into a high bun, applied minimal makeup, tried to look like someone who hadn't spent the night lying next to a man who terrified and attracted her in equal measure. She stepped into the bedroom to find Jiho adjusting his tie in the mirror, now fully dressed in the charcoal suit that made him look every inch the dangerous heir he was. His eyes traveled over her appraisingly. "Good," he said. "You look like you belong at my side. I don't belong anywhere near you. And yet, here you are." He offered his hand. "Come. Before dinner, I'm taking you shopping in Gangnam. You need jewelry that matches your new status." "I don't need—" "You do." His voice hardened slightly. "You're a Kang now. That comes with expectations. My wife needs to look like she belongs to the family that controls half of Seoul's underground." His eyes held hers, like she's worth keeping. The shift in phrasing, from romantic to practical, felt more honest somehow, less like he was pretending this was something it wasn't. They took his car, the same black sedan from last night. As they drove through Seoul's morning traffic, Jiho's hand settled on her thigh, possessive, warm through the fabric of her pants. When she shifted uncomfortably, his fingers tightened just enough to make a point. "New boundary," Alana said tightly. "Ask before touching me." "No." His response was immediate, casual. "In private, I'll respect your requests. In public, I touch you however I want. That's part of the arrangement. We need to look like a real couple, which means you'll accept my touch without flinching." His thumb moved in a small circle against her leg. "Practice not flinching now. You'll need it tonight." She wanted to argue, but he was right. The contract demanded she play devoted wife convincingly, and devoted wives didn't flinch away from their husband's casual affection, so she forced herself to relax, forced herself to breathe through the heat of his palm, the possessive weight of his touch. "Better," Jiho murmured approvingly. The shopping district in Gangnam was overwhelming. Luxury boutiques lined the streets, their windows displaying items with price tags that made Alana's academic salary look like pocket change. The sidewalks were filled with impeccably dressed people, mostly Korean, mostly pale-skinned and slim. Alana felt conspicuous, her dark skin and curves drawing stares that ranged from curious to hostile. This was a world she didn't belong in, and everyone could see it. Jiho seemed to sense her discomfort. His arm slid around her waist, pulling her close. "Eyes up," he said quietly. "You're with me. That means you outrank everyone looking at you. Act like it." Easy for him to say. He belonged here, born into wealth and power, moving through these spaces with the confidence of someone who'd never had to question his place. But something in his words steadied her. She lifted her chin, met the stairs head on. He led her into a jewelry store that looked more like a museum, all marble and soft lighting and glass cases displaying pieces that probably cost more than cars. Staff immediately recognized Jiho, bowing with practiced deference. Mr. Kang, the manager greeted him in accented English, his eyes sliding to Alana with poorly concealed curiosity. Welcome. How may we serve you today? Wedding rings, Jiho said simply. For my wife. The manager's smile widened. Of course. We have an excellent selection. No, Jiho cut him off. Custom. I want something designed specifically for her. Something that makes a statement. The manager led them to a private room where he brought out trays of diamonds, sapphires, rubies, stones that glittered like captured starlight under the focused lighting. Jiho examined each one with the focus of a man used to acquiring valuable things, occasionally holding one up to Alana's hand, checking how it looked against her dark skin. This one, he finally said, selecting a large diamond with a deep red ruby on either side. Set in platinum, the band should be etched with cranes, traditional, elegant, and inside... He paused, his eyes meeting Alana's. Inside, engrave mine. Always. Alana's breath caught. That's too much. It's exactly right, Jiho said firmly. It tells you what you are, what this is. Every time you look at your hand, you'll remember. You can't just, I am. He turned to the manager. How long? 2 weeks for a custom piece of this complexity. 1 week. Jiho's voice allowed no argument. Money is not a concern. I want it done in 1 week. Of course, Mr. Kang. It will be ready. As they left the store and headed back to the car, Alana finally found her voice. You really are insane. Perhaps. Jiho opened her door, his hand settling on the small of her back as she slid in. But I'm your husband, and tonight you'll smile at my family and convince them you chose this, chose me. He closed her door, walked around to the driver's side. Once inside, his hand returned to her thigh, a different position this time, higher, more intimate. Can you do that, Alana? Can you lie that convincingly? She thought of her father safe in Miami, thought of 3 years stretching ahead, thought of the way Jiho's touch made her skin burn despite everything he'd done. I can lie, she said quietly. Then, with more defiance, I've been lying since the moment I signed that contract. What's one more performance? Something flickered in his expression. Respect, maybe, or satisfaction. Good, because my mother will see right through weakness. She's intelligent, ruthless, and has very specific ideas about who belongs in this family. He glanced at her, and for just a moment, something almost like concern crossed his features. She's more dangerous than I am, Alana. Remember that tonight. What does that mean? It means she won't threaten you with violence. She'll threaten you with something worse, making your life so unbearable you'll beg to leave. And if you break, if you run... His jaw tightened. The contract becomes void. Your father's debt returns, with interest. Alana's blood ran cold. You didn't mention that clause. Didn't I? His smile was thin. My mistake. Consider yourself informed now. You can hate me, fight me, make my life hell, but you cannot leave, not for 3 years, not unless you want your father dead. The casual cruelty of it stole her breath. She'd known he was dangerous, but this was something else, a trap with no escape. I won't run, she said, her voice hard as stone, but don't expect me to thank you for this cage. I don't expect gratitude, Jiho said softly. I expect survival, and eventually, Alana, I expect surrender. They drove the rest of the way in tense silence, his hand still on her thigh, a constant burning reminder of ownership. When they finally pulled up to his parents' estate in Pyeongchang-dong, Alana's heart hammered against her ribs. The house was stunning, traditional Korean architecture mixed with modern luxury, set behind tall walls and manicured gardens. Security guards opened gates as they approached. Ready? Jiho asked, killing the engine. No. Good answer. He squeezed her thigh once, almost comforting. Stay close to me. Don't show fear. And remember, you're my wife. That gives you power, whether you feel it or not." As they walked to the front door, his hand found the small of her back again. Possessive, protective, impossible to read. The door opened before they reached it, and Alana came face to face with the woman who'd raised a monster. The door opened before they reached it, revealing a woman who was not what Alana expected. She'd braced herself for cold elegance, for the kind of woman who wore her cruelty like diamonds. Instead, Jiho's mother was small, barely reaching Alana's shoulder, impeccably dressed in a silk hanbok the color of midnight, with silver threading through her dark hair and eyes that assessed Alana with the precision of a jeweler examining a questionable stone. "So," Mrs. Kang said in lightly accented English, each word carefully pronounced, "this is the woman my son bought." Alana's breath caught. Beside her, Jiho's hand tightened on her back in warning. "Mother," he said, his voice pleasant but edged with steel, "this is my wife Alana. Show her respect." "Respect is earned, Jiho-ah, not purchased." Mrs. Kang's smile was thin as a blade, but she stepped aside. "Come inside, both of you. Your father and sister are waiting." The interior was stunning. Traditional Korean architecture seamlessly blended with modern luxury. Alana caught glimpses of priceless art, ancient pottery displayed like museum pieces. This wasn't just wealth. This was generations of power consolidated into walls and floors, an air that felt heavy with history. In the formal dining room, 2 more people waited. A man who could only be Jiho's father. Same sharp features, same dangerous eyes, but older and harder, like violence had calcified in his bones. He sat at the head of the table with the posture of someone accustomed to absolute authority, and a young woman in her early 20s with Jiho's coloring but softer features, her eyes bright with undisguised curiosity. "Father," Jiho greeted with a respectful bow that Alana quickly mimicked. "This is Alana." Mr. Kang's gaze traveled over her slowly, clinically, like she was livestock being evaluated. Finally, he nodded. Unusual choice, but bold. He gestured to the table with casual command. "Sit. Let's see if she can survive a family dinner." The younger woman bounced up immediately. "I'm Minji," she said in English, tinged with an American accent, extending her hand Western style. Then, seeming to catch herself, she bowed slightly. "It's nice to meet you, honey." The Korean honorific felt tentative, testing, like she wasn't sure if Alana would accept it. "You too," Alana managed, shaking her hand. "Sit next to me," Minji said, but her eyes flicked to Jiho first, asking permission. When he nodded, she smiled more genuinely. "I want to hear everything about how you two met." "You'll hear nothing," Mrs. Kang said sharply as they took their seats. "That's their business, not yours." The meal was elaborate, course after course of traditional Korean dishes that Alana couldn't name, each more beautiful than the last. Nothing like her abuela's ropa vieja or the black beans and rice that meant home. This food was art, precise and controlled, delicious but foreign. Staff appeared and disappeared like ghosts, and conversation flowed mostly in Korean between the family members, with occasional switches to English. Alana felt Jiho's hand settle on her knee under the table, warm, possessive, grounding. She was grateful for it despite herself. Mrs. Kang watched Alana throughout, her expression unreadable. The weight of that gaze made Alana's pulse jump, made her hyper-aware of every movement, every bite. This was a test. Everything here was a test. Finally, between courses, Mrs. Kang set down her chopsticks and spoke. "Tell me, Alana, what do you love most about my son?" The room went silent. Even Minji stopped eating. Mr. Kang leaned back in his chair, watching with the detached interest of someone observing an experiment. Alana's heart hammered. Her exhausted mind raced. She'd barely slept, had been performing all day, and now this, a trap question designed to expose her. Under the table, Jiho's hand tightened on her knee. A warning, or maybe encouragement. She couldn't tell. What could she possibly say? That she loved nothing about him because this was a transaction? That would insult the family. That she loved his wealth? Too obvious, too shallow? That she loved him? a lie Mrs. Kang would see through immediately. Her mouth went dry. She reached for her water glass, buying seconds. Then it hit her, the one truth she could offer that wasn't a complete lie. His honesty, Alana said finally, meeting Mrs. Kang's eyes even though her pulse thundered in her ears. He's never pretended to be something he's not. From the first moment, he told me exactly what this marriage was. No false promises, no pretty lies, just truth, even when it was brutal. She felt Jiho's hand flex against her leg. In a world where everyone wears masks, that's rare. If you're enjoying Alana and Jiho's intense journey so far, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Are you Team Jiho, or do you think Alana should run while she still can? And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss what happens next. Now, back to the story. The silence stretched. Alana couldn't tell if she'd passed or failed. Then something shifted in Mrs. Kang's expression, not warmth exactly, but something closer to acknowledgement. "Interesting answer," she said softly. "Most women would have said his wealth, his power, his face." Her eyes narrowed slightly, calculating. "But you chose honesty. That tells me you either understand my son very well, or you're clever enough to know what I wanted to hear." "Perhaps both," Alana replied, surprised by her own boldness. Exhaustion was making her reckless. Mrs. Kang's smile was sharp, genuine, and somehow more dangerous than her earlier coldness. "I think you'll do, after all. Jiho, you may have chosen better than I expected." She lifted her glass, and everyone else followed suit. "To my new daughter-in-law, welcome to our family. May you find your place among us." The toast sounded like a welcome but felt like a warning. Find your place, or be destroyed. After dinner, Minji approached hesitantly. Could I show you the garden?" she asked, looking to Jiho first. "Just for a few minutes?" Jiho's jaw tightened. He clearly didn't want to let Alana out of his sight, but refusing would look suspicious, possessive in front of his parents. 10 minutes, he said finally. Then in Korean, he said something sharp to Minji that made her nod quickly. Outside, the night air was cool, the Seoul skyline glittering beyond the estate walls. Minji walked a few steps in silence before speaking. "He told me not to say anything that would scare you," she admitted with a small smile. "But you should know. You handled Mother perfectly in there. She respects strength, not submission." Her expression turned more serious. "I know how this marriage started. I know about the contract." Alana's blood went cold. "Jiho told you?" "No, I overheard." Minji glanced back at the house. I wanted you to know that despite how this started, I think my brother actually cares about you. I haven't seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." She paused, choosing words carefully. "Like if anything happened to you, he'd burn everything down." "That's obsession, not care." "Maybe," Minji agreed. "But in this family, obsession is the closest thing we have to love." She touched Alana's arm gently. "Also, you should know. Being connected to us makes you a target. My brother has enemies, people who will see you as his weakness, a way to hurt him. He's mentioned that." "Good. Then you understand the danger." Minji's eyes were kind but worried. "He'll protect you. He's obsessive about what's his. But it won't be easy. Nothing about being a Kang ever is." Before Alana could respond, Jiho appeared at the garden entrance. "Time to leave," he said, his eyes finding Alana immediately. Not angry, but clearly done sharing her. The drive home was quiet except for Seoul's nighttime traffic. Jiho's hand settled on her thigh, higher than before, more possessive, his thumb moving in small circles that sent unwanted heat through her body. "You did well tonight," he said finally. "My mother doesn't give compliments easily. You impressed her." I told her the truth. "I know." He glanced at her, something unreadable in his dark eyes. That's what made it impressive. Most people lie to her constantly. You didn't. "Would you have preferred I lied?" "No." His hand tightened on her leg, possessive and warm. "I prefer you exactly as you are. Honest, defiant, impossible to fully control." A pause, heavy with meaning. Mine. Back at the penthouse, exhaustion finally crashed over Alana like a wave, delayed but devastating. The adrenaline that had carried her through dinner evaporated, leaving her hollowed out. "Go to bed," Jiho said, reading her exhaustion with unnerving accuracy. "I have calls to make. I'll be up late." She should have felt relieved at the prospect of sleeping alone. Instead, she felt something that might have been disappointment, which was insane. But as she lay in his bed an hour later, because it was his bed now, not theirs, she couldn't think of it any other way, the sheets smelling like cedar and smoke, she found herself listening for him, waiting for his footsteps in the hall. When he finally slipped into bed sometime after midnight, the mattress dipping under his weight, he didn't immediately settle. She felt him watching her in the darkness. "I know you're awake," he said quietly. She didn't respond, didn't move. His hand found hers under the covers, not demanding, just there. Warm. Present. "Thank you," he said so softly she almost missed it. "For tonight, for playing your part perfectly. That's what the contract says to do." "I know." His thumb traced across her knuckles. "But you went beyond that. You protected my face in front of my family. You didn't have to do it so well." "Your mother terrifies me. Self-preservation is a strong motivator." She felt rather than saw his smile in the darkness. "She should terrify you. She's more dangerous than I am." They lay in silence, his hand still holding hers. Alana told herself to pull away, told herself this intimacy was dangerous, that she needed to maintain distance. But she was exhausted, and his touch was warm. And for just a moment, she let herself pretend this was something other than a cage. She was drifting toward sleep when his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He tensed immediately, releasing her hand to check it. She heard him inhale sharply. "What?" she asked, more alert now. "Nothing you need to worry about." But his voice was tight, controlled, the way it got when he was concealing something dangerous. "Jiho?" "Sleep, Alana." He set the phone down but didn't relax. "Just don't leave this penthouse tomorrow. Not for any reason. Understand?" Her heart kicked against her ribs. "Why? What's happening?" "Business. Nothing that concerns you." But then, his hand found hers again under the covers, gripping tighter than before. Protective. Or possessive. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. "Promise me. You won't leave." The urgency in his voice scared her more than any threat he'd made before. "I promise," she whispered. He pulled her closer then, not asking permission, just drawing her against his chest like she was something that needed guarding. His arms wrapped around her, one hand cradling her head against his shoulder. "Sleep," he said again, but this time it sounded almost tender. And despite everything, the contract, the fear, the uncertainty, Alana found her eyes closing, found herself relaxing into his hold, found herself wondering when exactly she'd stopped fighting his touch, when exactly this cage had started to feel dangerously like shelter. Alana woke to an empty bed and the sound of raised voices downstairs. She sat up, disoriented, the morning light too bright against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Jiho's side of the bed was cold. He'd been gone for hours, and somewhere below she could hear him speaking in sharp, clipped Korean through what sounded like his office door. She shouldn't care, shouldn't be curious. This was his business, his world, nothing to do with her. But he'd made her promise not to leave, had held her last night like she was something that needed protecting. Something was wrong. Alana pulled on a silk robe and crept downstairs. The voices grew clearer as she approached Jiho's office. The door was closed, but sound carried through the expensive wood. She pressed herself against the wall beside the doorframe, heart hammering. Jiho's voice was ice. "It can't be a coincidence, not this soon after the wedding." A second man responded, his Korean rapid but his tone clearly deferential. She caught one repeated word that sounded like a name, Choi. "How many men does he have in Seoul now?" Jiho demanded. The response was lengthy. Alana understood nothing except numbers, ship, chill, and the urgency in the man's voice. "Triple the security on this building," Jiho ordered, switching to English. Whether for emphasis or because he knew she might be listening, Alana couldn't tell. I want eyes on every entrance, every floor, and find who leaked my marriage details. When you do, bring them to me. Alive." "What about your wife?" the man asked in accented English. "She's exposed, vulnerable. We should move her somewhere." "No." The word was absolute. "She stays here, where I can see her, where I can protect her." "Boss, if Choi Min-seok gets to her, he won't." Jiho's voice dropped to something lethal, something that made Alana's blood run cold even through the door. "But if he tries, I want you to make sure I'm the one who gets to him first. I'll handle it personally." Silence. Then footsteps approaching the door. Alana fled back upstairs, heart racing, and dove under the covers just as she heard the office door open below. Heavy footsteps, not Jiho's, headed toward the elevator, then lighter steps on the stairs. The bedroom door opened. She kept her breathing even, eyes closed. Jiho stood in the doorway for a long moment. She could feel his gaze on her, assessing. Then he crossed to the bed and sat on the edge, and she felt the mattress dip under his weight. His hand touched her hair, gentle, almost reverent, tucking a loose braid behind her ear. "I won't let anything happen to you," he murmured. So quietly she almost missed it. "You're mine to protect now. That's not negotiable, Alana, even if you hate me for the rest of 3 years." The words shouldn't have affected her, but something in her chest tightened with unwanted warmth. He left, closing the door softly. Alana's eyes opened, staring at the ceiling. Her heart was doing something complicated, something dangerous. An hour later, she ventured downstairs to find Jiho in the kitchen, surprisingly domestic in jeans and a black t-shirt that revealed the lean muscle of his arms. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders. But when she entered, his eyes scanned her face immediately, checking for damage like she was something breakable. "Good morning," he said. "There's breakfast. Mrs. Choi made—" "Who's Choi?" Alana interrupted. "Not your housekeeper, the one who's dangerous." Jiho went very still, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his mouth. "You were listening." "You were loud, and I was worried." The admission surprised them both. He set down the cup slowly, studying her. Then he poured a second cup of coffee and pushed it across the counter toward her. "Sit. If you want the truth, I'll give it to you." Alana sat, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Choi Min-seok controls Busan," Jiho began, his voice carefully neutral. "Shipping, smuggling, most of the port operations. He's ambitious and ruthless, and he's been trying to expand into Seoul for years." His jaw tightened. "My father kept him contained. But 6 months ago, I took over active leadership. My father still advises, still holds ceremonial authority, but the day-to-day operations are mine now. And Choi sees that transition as weakness, an opportunity. To do what? To hurt me, to leverage me." Jiho's eyes met hers, dark and intense. "You're my wife now. That makes you a target. If he can get to you, he can force me to give him territory, operations, power." Alana's blood ran cold. "So I'm bait." "No." Jiho's hand shot across the counter, gripping her wrist with startling intensity. "You're protected. I've tripled security on this building. There are 6 men stationed here now, rotating shifts. No one gets to you without going through them. And me." His thumb pressed against her pulse point, feeling her heartbeat jump. "Anyone who tries will die screaming. I promise you that." The casual brutality should have horrified her. Instead, it made her feel something she didn't expect. Safe. "Why do you care this much?" she asked quietly, needing to understand. "It's a contract. If something happened to me, you'd be free of this arrangement. Your obsession would be over." His grip tightened to the point of pain. "Don't." His voice was rough, almost desperate. "Don't ever say that again. You think I spent a year watching you, manipulating your father's gambling debts, making sure he kept losing, kept borrowing from the right people until it fed back to me. You think I orchestrated all of that just to let you die?" His eyes burned into hers. "You're mine, Alana. I chose you. I claimed you, and I don't let go of what's mine." The possessiveness in his voice stole her breath. It wasn't love. It wasn't even affection. It was obsession. Pure, terrifying, absolute. And God help her, some twisted part of her responded to it. Some dark corner of herself that had been corrupted over these 3 days whispered, "At least someone wants you this much." "So what do I do?" she managed. "Hide here forever?" No. Jiho released her wrist, but his hand slid to her jaw instead, tilting her face up to his. "You live your life. Finish your dissertation. I'll arrange for your research materials to be brought here if needed. Go to the library when you must, but with guards. I won't make you a prisoner." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "But you will be careful, and you will tell me everywhere you go, every person you meet, everything." That's still control. It's protection disguised as control. His eyes searched hers. "And it's temporary. Once Choi is handled how?" His smile was cold, empty of humor. "You don't want details." "Will you kill him?" "If necessary." No hesitation, no remorse, just fact. "I've killed for lesser reasons. I'll certainly kill for you." The admission hung between them. Alana knew she should be horrified, should recoil from this man who spoke of murder like discussing the weather. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, into the warmth of his hand against her face, into the dark certainty of his protection. "I'm losing my mind," she whispered. "No." His voice was soft, almost tender. "You're adapting, surviving. That's different." His thumb traced her lower lip. "And you're starting to trust me even though you don't want to. That's what terrifies you." He was right. Damn him, he was right. "I have meetings today," Jiho said, his hand dropping away reluctantly. "But I'll be home by dinner. The security team knows your face. They won't bother you, but they're watching. If you need anything, Mrs. Choi will be here by noon." He paused. "And Alana? If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call me immediately. I don't care if I'm in a meeting with the president of Korea. You call. Understand? Okay. Promise me." "I promise." He studied her face for a moment longer, then did something unexpected. He leaned in and pressed his lips to her forehead. Brief, warm, somehow more intimate than anything else he'd done. "Stay safe," he murmured against her skin. Then he was gone. Alana sat alone with her coffee and the dangerous realization that she'd just promised to call him if she needed him, that some part of her wanted to. The day stretched long and restless. Alana tried to work on her dissertation, but concentration was impossible. She kept thinking about Choi, about danger, about Jiho's promise to kill for her, about the way he'd touched her hair while he thought she was sleeping. By late afternoon, she found herself in Jiho's office, drawn there despite knowing she shouldn't invade his private space. The room was all dark wood and leather, surprisingly refined. One wall was entirely books, financial texts, art history, Korean and English literature. She found a first edition Murakami, its pages worn from actual reading, and something about that detail, this violent man reading literary fiction, made him feel more human, more complex, more dangerous to her heart. She was replacing the book when her phone buzzed on the desk where she'd set it. Unknown number. Her pulse spiked. She stared at the screen, Jiho's warning echoing. "If anything feels wrong, you call me." This felt wrong, but curiosity won over caution. She opened the message, a photo loaded, her father's house in Miami, taken today. She could see the timestamp reflection on a car windshield in the frame. Someone had been there, watching, recently. Her hands started shaking. The phone buzzed again. Another message. "He's not safe." Alana's breath caught in her throat. The coffee cup slipped from her other hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. She barely noticed. Another buzz. "Neither are you, Mrs. Kang. Your husband took something from me. I'll take something from him. Soon." Her vision tunneled. The phone shook in her trembling hands as a final message appeared. "Tell him Choi sends his regards." Panic flooded her system, cold, visceral, paralyzing. Her father was in danger because of her, because she'd signed that contract, because Jiho had made her his. She should call him. She'd promised to call. but her hands were shaking too badly. The phone slipped through her fingers, clattering to the floor beside the broken coffee cup. And then she heard it, the sound that turned her blood to ice. The elevator, opening on the penthouse level. Footsteps, not Jiho's, heavier, unfamiliar. A voice called out in Korean-accented English, "Mrs. Kang, we need you to come with us. Mr. Kang sent us." Alana's heart stopped. Jiho had said the security team knew her face, would watch her, but he'd never said they'd come inside, never said they'd try to take her anywhere. She looked down at her phone on the floor. Jiho's #1 touch away. The footsteps were getting closer. Alana grabbed her phone from the floor, her fingers finally cooperating enough to pull up Jiho's contact. But before she could hit dial, the office door swung open. 2 men stood in the doorway, both Korean, both wearing black suits that looked wrong somehow, cheaper than the ones Jiho's security team wore. Faces she'd never seen before. "Mrs. Kang," the taller one said, his smile not reaching his eyes, "please come with us. Your husband sent us to move you somewhere safer." Alana's thumb hovered over Jiho's name. Every instinct screamed wrong. Jiho didn't mention moving me. The threat escalated. "We need to leave now." The man took a step into the office. "Then I'll call him to confirm." She pressed dial. The man's expression changed, pleasant mask dropping to reveal something cold. "I don't think so." He moved fast, closing the distance between them. His hand shot out, grabbing for her phone. Alana threw herself backward, crashing into Jiho's desk. The call connected. She heard the ring through the speaker just as the man's hand closed around her wrist, yanking her forward. "Alana!" Jiho's voice came through, sharp with alarm. "They're here!" she gasped, fighting against the grip. "2 men, they say you sent them, but I don't—" The man ripped the phone from her grip, ending the call. His fingers dug into her wrist hard enough to bruise. "Stupid girl." He switched to Korean, barking something at his partner, and though Alana didn't understand the words, she understood perfectly when the second man drew a gun. Her blood turned to ice. This was real. This was happening. "Choi wants to meet you," the tall man said, dragging her toward the door. "You can walk, or we carry you. Either way, you're leaving." Alana's mind raced through terror. Jiho knew, he'd heard, he was coming. She just had to survive until... A sound from the hallway, shouting in Korean, then gunfire. Sharp cracks that made her ears ring, made her whole body flinch. The sound of bodies hitting the floor just beyond the office. The man holding her cursed, viciously, spinning her around and yanking her back against his chest. Human shield. His partner raised his gun toward the door. "Don't!" The voice was cold, lethal, familiar. Jiho stood in the doorway, gun in hand, his suit jacket gone and blood splattered across his white shirt. Not his blood, she realized with sickening clarity, but from whoever had tried to stop him in the hallway. Behind him, 3 of his security team fanned out, weapons trained on the intruders. But Jiho's eyes, God, his eyes, were fixed on the man holding Alana with an expression that went beyond rage, beyond fury. It was murder, distilled and absolute. "Let her go," Jiho said. Each word was a death sentence. "You shoot me, she dies with me." Cold metal pressed against Alana's temple. A gun. He had a gun to her head. The world narrowed to that sensation. Cold metal, harsh grip, the smell of gunpowder and her own fear. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "You made a mistake coming into my home," Jiho said, his voice terrifyingly calm despite the wildness in his eyes. "Don't make another by touching what's mine with a weapon." "She's leverage now. Choi wants her alive, but he didn't say—" Jiho shot him. The crack was deafening. The man's shoulder exploded in red, and he screamed, high, agonized, animal. His grip on Alana loosened just enough. She threw herself forward, hitting the floor hard, her hands catching on broken glass from the coffee cup she'd dropped earlier. Pain lanced through her palms, but she didn't care. Just scrambled behind the desk as chaos erupted. More gunfire, shouting, the meaty sound of flesh hitting flesh. She pressed her hands over her ears, eyes squeezed shut, trying to block out the sounds of violence just feet away. Then, silence. Horrible, ringing silence. "Don't look." Strong hands pulled her up, turned her face into a broad chest, Jiho's chest, his arms wrapped around her, one hand cradling the back of her head. "Don't look, Alana, it's over." But she'd already seen. The second man crumpled near the door, the pool of blood spreading beneath him. The first man, the one who'd held her, pinned beneath Jiho's knee, still alive but gasping, clutching his ruined shoulder. "How many others?" Jiho demanded in English, his gun pressed under the man's chin. The man spat something in Korean, defiant, even bleeding out. Jiho's expression didn't change. He simply pulled the trigger. Alana flinched violently at the sound, her whole body jerking against Jiho's hold. The finality of it. The casual way he stood afterward, like he'd just dealt with paperwork rather than ended a life. Then he was back to her, holstering his gun with one hand while the other cupped her face. "Are you hurt? Did they hurt you?" His hands moved over her arms, her shoulders, checking for injuries with barely controlled desperation. "My hands! Glass!" Her voice came out strangled, shaking. He looked down, saw the blood on her palms from where she'd caught herself on the broken cup. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Who left glass on my floor?" He snapped at his security team in Korean, then softer, in English to her. "I've got you. Come on." He lifted her into his arms, and she didn't resist, didn't protest, just buried her face against his neck as he carried her out. Past the bodies, she caught glimpses despite trying not to look, the wrongness of death, the smell of blood and gunpowder thick in the air. Her stomach lurched. "Don't," Jiho said again, his voice gentler now. "Look at me. Only me." She did, fixed on his face, on his eyes, on anything but the carnage behind them. He carried her to the master bedroom, kicking the door closed behind them, set her on the bed with surprising gentleness. Then he was moving, grabbing a first aid kit from the bathroom, returning to kneel in front of her. "Let me see." He took her hands carefully, examining the cuts. They weren't deep, but glass glittered in a few places. "This will hurt, I'm sorry." He cleaned the wounds with steady hands despite the blood on his own shirt, despite having just killed 2 men, used tweezers to extract the glass pieces with focused precision. Alana watched him work, her mind somewhere far away, processing slowly through the shock. She'd almost been taken, almost been used as leverage. Almost. "The texts," she managed, her voice hoarse. "My father," Choi said. "Your father is safe." Jiho didn't look up from bandaging her hands. "I had people on him within minutes of those messages. They got to him first. He's secure now." "Where?" "Being moved to a safe house in Miami with 4 of my best men. Tomorrow they're flying him here, to Seoul, where I can protect him properly." He finally met her eyes. "Choi wanted to use him against you. That ends today." "How did they get past your security?" The question came out barely a whisper. His jaw tightened. "They didn't. My men were ambushed in the parking garage. 3 dead, 2 wounded. These 2 used stolen key cards to access the elevator." He finished bandaging her left hand, moved to her right. "I was 2 blocks away when you called. I broke every traffic law in Seoul getting here. The blood on your shirt." 2 more of Choi's men in the lobby. They tried to stop me." His voice was flat, emotionless. "They failed. 4 men dead to get to her. 2 more dead in his office. 6 lives ended in minutes. Alana should feel horror, should feel revulsion, should be running from this man who killed so easily, so efficiently. Instead, she felt safe, protected, like she was the center of something fierce and unbreakable. "I'm going insane," she whispered. "No." Jiho finished with, her hands set the first aid kit aside but didn't move from kneeling in front of her. "You're in shock. That's normal after—" He stopped, jaw working. "After what you went through, what you saw. You killed them. Yes. You didn't even hesitate. No." His eyes held hers unflinching. "They touched you, threatened you, put a gun to your head. There was no universe in which they walked away from that alive." She should be frightened, should see him as a monster. But all she could think was, he came for me, broke laws and killed men and fought through an ambush to get to me. "I need to make calls," Jiho said, still watching her carefully like she might shatter. Secure the building. Deal with... He gestured vaguely toward the office. But I'm not leaving this room. I'll stay right here where I can see you. Okay. The word came out small, childlike. Okay. He stood, pulled out his phone, and began speaking rapid Korean. Orders by the harsh tone. Pacing the room like a caged animal, all that controlled violence still simmering under his skin. Alana watched him, her bandaged hands folded in her lap, and tried to process. The fear, the blood, the casual way he'd executed a man begging for his life, the way he was checking on her every few seconds like she might disappear if he looked away too long. Your father will be here tomorrow, Jiho said, ending a call. Heavily guarded. You can see him, talk to him, make sure he's really safe. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. And I'm leaving for Busan tonight. Her heart stuttered. What? Choi sent 6 men into my home, killed 3 of my people, put a gun to your head. His voice was ice wrapped in fury. I'm going to Busan, and I'm going to make sure he understands exactly what happens when someone threatens my wife. You're going to kill him. Yes. No hesitation, no apology. But first, I'm going to make him regret ever learning your name, ever thinking you were a weakness he could exploit. Alana knew she should protest, should tell him this was too much, too far, that more killing wouldn't solve anything. But she thought of the gun against her temple, thought of the cold certainty in that man's voice when he said Choi wanted to meet her, thought of her father photographed like prey. How long will you be gone? She asked instead. Jiho stopped pacing, turned to face her fully. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or relief that she wasn't fighting him on this. 2 days, maybe 3. You'll stay here with my entire security team. I'm pulling in reinforcements from Busan after this, doubling the guards. He crossed to the bed, sat beside her. And Alana, I need you to promise me something. What? That you'll be here when I get back. His hand found hers carefully, mindful of the bandages. That you won't use these days while I'm gone to run, to leave, to break the contract. Where would I go? She asked. But that wasn't what he was asking. That's not... He stopped, jaw tightening. What happened today? What you saw me do? I need to know if that changed things. If you're afraid of me now in a way you weren't before. She looked at him, really looked. At the blood drying on his shirt, evidence of violence. At the intensity in his dark eyes, the barely leashed fury still simmering there. At the hands that had killed 6 men today, now holding hers like she was something breakable. She should say yes. Should use this moment, this clarity, to see him for what he was. Dangerous, obsessive, willing to murder without hesitation. But when she opened her mouth, different words came out. Words that felt pulled from somewhere deep and honest and terrifying. I'm afraid, she admitted. But not of you. I'm afraid of... She swallowed hard. Of how safe I feel when you're here. How much I wanted you to come when I called. How right it felt when you walked through that door. Her eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. I should be horrified by what you did, and part of me is, but the rest of me... She met his gaze. The rest of me is grateful, because you came for me. You protected me. And She couldn't finish, couldn't say the words that would make it too real, but Jiho understood anyway. His free hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped despite her best efforts. I'll always come for you, he said, voice rough with emotion she didn't know he was capable of. No matter what, no matter where. You call, and I'll burn the world down to get to you. I know, she whispered. And God help her. She did know. Believed it with a certainty that should terrify her. He kissed her forehead, that same gesture that had become his claim, his promise. Then her temple, where the gun had pressed, like he could erase the memory with his lips. I'll come back to you, he said against her skin. And when I do, Choi will never threaten you or your father again. I promise you that. What if... She couldn't say it. What if you don't come back? What if someone kills you? What happens to me then? I'll come back, he repeated, reading her fear. I've survived worse than Choi Min-seok, and I have something to come back to now. His eyes held hers. You. She should tell him not to go, should tell him revenge wasn't worth his life. Instead, she heard herself say, I'll be here when you get back, I promise. The relief that flooded his expression was almost painful to witness. This dangerous man made vulnerable by the simple promise that she'd wait. He pulled her close then, wrapping her in his arms, and she let him. Let herself be held by a killer who'd become her protector. Let herself feel safe in the embrace of a man who'd just committed murder in her name. And when he finally left hours later, security briefings complete, the office cleaned, the bodies removed like they'd never existed, Alana stood at the window and watched his car disappear into Seoul's nighttime traffic. Watched him leave to kill for her, and realized with terrifying clarity that she'd stopped counting days until the contract ended, had stopped thinking of this as temporary, had stopped seeing Ji-ho as her captor and started seeing him as, what? Her protector? Her obsession? Something more dangerous than either? She didn't know, couldn't name it. But as she climbed into his bed alone that night, surrounded by his scent, her bandaged hands clutching his pillow, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would wait for him. And when he came back, when, not if, everything would be different between them. The cage had become something else entirely. If you're as captivated by Alana and Ji-ho's intense journey as I am, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. And comment below. Do you think Ji-ho will make it back from Busan? What do you think will be different between them? Let's find out. Ji-ho had been gone for 3 days, and Alana was unraveling. The first night, she'd barely slept, lying in his bed, surrounded by his scent, jumping at every sound. The security team's presence should have been comforting, but instead it reminded her constantly that she needed protection. That danger was real and close. The second day, her father had arrived from Miami, flanked by 4 guards looking a decade older than when she'd last seen him. The reunion had been complicated. Relief and anger and guilt tangled together so tightly she couldn't separate them. Mija, he'd said, pulling her into his arms in the penthouse living room. Dios mío, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. She'd wanted to rage at him, wanted to scream that yes, it was his fault, that his gambling had sold her into this nightmare. But when she'd opened her mouth, different words came out. He's protecting us, Papa. Ji-ho went to Busan to make sure we're safe. Her father had pulled back, searching her face. You're defending him? The man who bought you? The man who's keeping us alive, she'd corrected. And hadn't that been the truth? Uncomfortable, complicated, but true. Now, on the 3rd evening, Alana stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul, watching the sun set over the Han River in streaks of orange and pink. The city glittered below, beautiful and indifferent. Her phone sat on the side table, silent. Ji-ho hadn't called, hadn't texted since a brief message yesterday. Still handling things. Safe. 2 words. Safe. Like that was supposed to be enough. She told herself she wasn't worried, told herself she was just anxious for this to be over, so her father could return to Miami, so the security team could scale back, so life could return to whatever passed for normal now. But that was a lie. She was worried. Terrified, actually, because men who went to war didn't always come home. Her phone buzzed. Alana's heart leaped. She grabbed it, hands shaking slightly. Ji-ho's name on the screen. Finally. But it wasn't a call. It was a photo message. The image loaded, and Alana's breath caught in her throat. Ji-ho stood in what looked like a warehouse, concrete walls and industrial lighting casting harsh shadows. His white shirt, different from the blood-stained one from 3 days ago, was rolled to his elbows, revealing the corded muscle of his forearms. Behind him, several men in black suits stood at attention, and in front of him, on his knees with hands bound behind his back, was another man, older, graying hair, face already swelling from what must have been a brutal beating, split lip, blackened eye, blood trailing from his nose. Choi Min-seok. That had to be Choi. Ji-ho's expression in the photo was terrifyingly calm, not angry, not cruel, just businesslike. One hand rested almost casually on the kneeling man's shoulder. The other held a gun, the barrel pointed down. Alana stared at the image, and for a moment, one horrible, crystal-clear moment, she saw it. What Jiho was. Not the man who'd held her tenderly after the attack. Not the man who'd promised to protect her. But the killer. The crime lord. The monster who'd bought her. Her stomach churned. This was real. This was what he'd gone to do. This was... Her phone buzzed again, a text below the photo. It's done. Coming home. 20 minutes. Jaeun done. Meaning Choi was dead. Meaning Jiho had executed him and photographed it and sent it to her like... What? Proof? A trophy? Evidence that he'd kept his promise? She should be horrified. Should be disgusted. Should be terrified of the man who could do this and then text her casually about coming home. But underneath the initial shock, underneath the nausea and fear, something else stirred. Something dark that whispered. He did this for you. He killed for you. You're safe now. The phone rang in her hand, making her jump. Jiho's name flashed on the screen. She answered, her voice coming out steadier than she felt. Hello? Did you see the photo? His voice was rough, exhausted, but alive. So alive. Yes. She swallowed hard. Is he dead? Yes. No hesitation. No remorse. Just fact. It's over, Alana. Choi won't threaten you or your father again. His lieutenants have been convinced to align with our interests. Busan is stable. Our interests. Like she was part of this now. Part of his criminal empire. Maybe she was. You sent me a photo of an execution, she said, and couldn't keep the tremor from her voice. Why? Silence on the other end, then quieter. Because I wanted you to see that I keep my promises, that when I say I'll protect you, I mean it, that there's nothing... He stopped, and she heard him take a breath. Nothing I won't do for you. Her eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. You could have just told me it was done. Would you have believed me without proof? The question hung between them, and the terrible truth was... Probably not. She'd needed to see it. Needed the evidence that the threat was really, truly gone. When will you be home? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Home. She'd called the penthouse home again, and this time she didn't even catch herself. I'm landing now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. A pause, heavy with unspoken things. Are you safe? Your father? Has anything... We're fine. Nothing's happened. The security team had been vigilant to the point of suffocation, but she didn't say that. We're just waiting. I'm coming. His voice roughened with something that sounded like need. 20 minutes, Alana. I'm coming home to you. The call ended. Alana stood there, phone clutched in her hand, her reflection staring back at her from the darkened window. She looked different somehow. Changed. The woman looking back at her wasn't the same one who'd signed that contract 8 days ago. 8 days. That's all it had been. Just over a week since her life had been bought and sold and transformed into something unrecognizable. 8 days, and she was standing here waiting for a killer to come home, checking her reflection like she cared what he thought, her heart racing with something that felt dangerously close to excitement. Mia? Her father's voice came from behind her. He stood in the hallway looking worn and worried. Was that him? Yes, he's on his way. She turned to face him. It's done. Choi is dead. We're safe now. Her father's expression darkened with something complicated, relief mixed with horror. You know what that means, what he did. I know. And you're... He gestured helplessly at her, at the way she stood by the window watching for headlights. Waiting for him. Like he's just coming home from work. Isn't he? The words came out sharper than intended. This is his work, Papa. This is what he does. What he's always done. I knew that when I signed the contract. But you didn't know you'd... He stopped himself. Say it, Alana challenged. I didn't know I'd what? Start to care. Her father's voice was soft, sad. Start to wait for him. Start to call this place home. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. Your mother, God rest her soul, she would have understood. She always said love makes us do impossible things. This isn't love. The protest sounded weak even to her own ears. Not yet, maybe, her father agreed, his thumb rubbing circles on her hand the way he used to when she was small and scared. But it's becoming something. I can see it in your eyes when you talk about him. The way you defended him to me yesterday, the way you're standing here now, waiting. His eyes held hers, worried and knowing. It terrifies you. What you're feeling. What he makes you feel. He was right. God, he was right, and she hated it. I should be horrified by that photo, she whispered. By what he did, what he's capable of. But you're not. I am. Part of me is. She pulled her hands free, wrapping her arms around herself. But another part is grateful, relieved, safe. Her voice broke on the last word. What does that make me? Human, her father said simply, and maybe a little bit in love. Before Alana could respond, before she could deny or confirm or process that terrifying possibility, she heard it. The elevator, opening on the penthouse level. Her heart jumped into her throat. She turned toward the sound, her whole body suddenly alive with awareness. The doors opened and Jiho stepped out. He looked like he'd been through hell, shadows carved deep under his eyes, his jaw dark with 3 days of stubble, his clothes rumpled and stained with things she didn't want to identify. A cut across his cheekbone that hadn't been there before. Evidence that Busan hadn't been entirely easy, despite his calm photo, but whole, alive, here. Their eyes met across the space and everything else. Her father, the security team, the city beyond the windows, faded to nothing. Neither moved. The air between them felt electric, charged with 3 days of separation and fear and violence, and things neither of them had said, but both of them felt. Then Jiho dropped his bag and moved. Not walked, moved. Fast and purposeful, closing the distance between them in seconds. Alana met him halfway. She didn't make a conscious decision to move. Her body just went, drawn to him like gravity, like inevitability. He caught her hard, his arms wrapping around her so tightly she could barely breathe. One hand cradled the back of her head, the other splayed across her lower back, holding her against him like he was afraid she'd disappear. His face buried in her hair, in the curve of her neck, and she felt him shaking. Actually shaking. "You stayed," he said against her skin, his voice rough and broken. "You're here. You're really here." "You came back," she replied, her own arms locked around him, holding just as desperately. Her hands found his shoulders, his back, reassuring herself that he was solid and real and whole. "You promised you'd come back. I'll always come back to you." He pulled back just enough to look at her, his hands framing her face like she was something precious. His eyes, dark and intense and raw with emotion she'd never seen before, searched hers. "I killed him, Alana. I killed him and 5 of his men, and I burned his operation to the ground, and I'd do it again. I'd do worse. She kissed him, cut off his words with her mouth on his, and it wasn't gentle or tender or careful. It was desperate and hungry, and 3 days of fear and relief and things she couldn't name all poured into that kiss. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he responded immediately. One hand sliding into her hair, angling her head, deepening the kiss with a groan that vibrated through both of them. He tasted like exhaustion and danger, and something that was uniquely him. His stubble scraped against her skin. His body was hard and solid against hers, and she pressed closer, needing to feel him, to confirm he was really here, really alive, really... "Alana," he breathed against her mouth, and it sounded like a prayer and a curse. His forehead pressed to hers, his breathing ragged. "If you keep kissing me like that, I won't be able to stop, and your father is standing right there." She'd forgotten. Completely forgotten her father was in the room watching this, witnessing her kiss the man who'd bought her like she was drowning and he was air. Alana pulled back slightly, her face heating, but she didn't let go of Jiho's shirt. Couldn't let go. Her father's voice came from behind her, awkward and knowing. "I'll go to my room, give you two some privacy." His footsteps retreated, and then she heard the guest room door close, leaving them alone. Jiho's hands were still on her face, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "You kissed me," he said, wonder and heat mixing in his voice. "You actually kissed me. You killed for me." The words came out without thought. "You went to war for me. You—" Her voice broke. "You could have died. But I didn't." His eyes held hers, fierce and certain. "I told you I'd come back. I keep my promises, Alana, all of them." She knew what he meant. The promise to protect her father, to eliminate the threat, to come home. But standing there in his arms, feeling his heart hammer against hers, seeing the way he looked at her like she was everything, she wondered if there were other promises, unspoken ones, promises about 3 years becoming something more. "I was scared," she admitted, and the vulnerability of it made her voice shake. "While you were gone, I was terrified something would happen to you, that you wouldn't come back, that I'd—" She stopped, unable to finish. "That you'd what?" His voice was soft, coaxing. "That I'd lost something I didn't even know I had yet," she whispered. Something shifted in his expression, something that looked dangerously close to love. "You have me," he said, and it wasn't possessive or controlling. It was a gift, an offering. "However you want me, whatever you'll take, it's yours, Alana. I'm yours." The words should have scared her, should have sent her running back behind her walls, back to thinking of him as her captor. This is a contract. But all she felt was relief and want, and something terrifying that felt like it might be the beginning of love. "I don't know what this is," she said honestly. "What's happening between us? But it's not just the contract anymore, is it?" "No." His smile was small, almost vulnerable. "It stopped being just the contract the moment I saw you in that tea house 2 years ago. It stopped being just the contract when I spent a year orchestrating ways to have you. It stopped being just the contract." His hand slid to rest over her heart. "The day I realized you were the only thing that could make me feel human again." 2 years. He'd been obsessed with her for 2 years before any of this started. The revelation should horrify her. Instead, it made something in her chest warm with dangerous possibility. "Take me to bed," she said, and watched his eyes darken with heat and surprise. Not for that. Not yet. But I'm exhausted, and you look like you're about to collapse, and I want to be close to you, to know you're really here. Alana, please." He didn't argue, just lifted her into his arms, easy, like she weighed nothing, and carried her to his bedroom. Their bedroom, she realized, because at some point in the last 8 days, it had become theirs. He set her on the bed, toed off his shoes, and collapsed beside her with a groan of pure exhaustion. Within seconds, his arm was around her, pulling her close so her back pressed to his chest. "Sleep," he murmured, against her hair. "We'll talk more when I'm not dead on my feet. But Alana—" "Yeah? Thank you. For being here, for waiting, for—" He paused, and she felt his lips press to her shoulder. "For kissing me like you meant it." "I did mean it," she whispered. His arm tightened around her, and within minutes she felt his breathing even out into sleep. Alana lay there in his arms, staring at the Seoul skyline through the windows, and let herself acknowledge the truth she'd been avoiding. The contract said 3 years, but her heart was already hoping for something more dangerous than freedom, something like forever. 2 weeks after Jiho returned from Busan, Alana woke up nauseous for the 3rd morning in a row. She barely made it to the bathroom before her stomach revolted, and she found herself kneeling on the cold marble floor, shaking and miserable. Behind her, she heard Jiho's concerned voice, felt his hand gathering her braids back from her face. "That's it," he said firmly once she'd finished. "I'm calling the doctor. This isn't just stress anymore." "It's probably nothing," Alana protested weakly, accepting the glass of water he handed her. But even as she said it, her mind was calculating. 2 weeks of exhaustion, random nausea. Her period. When was her last period? Oh, God. I need you to go, she said suddenly. Just give me a few minutes alone, please. Jiho's eyes narrowed with concern, but he nodded. 5 minutes, then I'm coming back to check on you. The moment he left, Alana's hands shook as she searched under the bathroom sink. Mrs. Choi kept the penthouse stocked with everything. Surely there would be... Yes, a pregnancy test, still in its box, probably left over from some routine supply order. Her heart hammered as she took it. As she waited the longest 3 minutes of her life, sitting on the edge of the bathtub, staring at that little window that would change everything. 2 lines, unmistakably positive. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Not because she didn't want it, but because this complicated everything. The contract, the 3 years, the carefully maintained illusion that this was temporary. She took 2 more tests, both positive. Alana was still staring at them, lined up on the counter like an accusation, when she heard Jiho's voice from the bedroom. Alana, time's up. I'm coming in. She didn't have time to hide them, didn't have time to process or plan or figure out what this meant. The door opened. Jiho took 3 steps inside before his eyes found the tests on the counter. He went absolutely still. Alana, I'm pregnant. The words came out flat, mechanical, because if she let herself feel anything, she'd shatter completely. 2 weeks, maybe 3. I don't know exactly when. You're pregnant, he repeated, his voice strange, rough. With my child. She waited for anger, for calculation, for him to see this as the complication it was, a baby binding them together beyond. The contract's neat 3-year endpoint, but what she saw in his face was wonder, raw, unguarded wonder. Our child, he corrected, crossing to her slowly like she might bolt. You're carrying our baby. I know this wasn't part of the plan, she said quickly, needing to get the words out. The contract says 3 years and then I'm free to go. This changes everything. I don't expect you to... Stop. His hands framed her face, tilting it up to meet his eyes. What are you talking about? Free to go. That's the deal. 3 years and I can leave. You get what you wanted, I get my freedom, we both move on. The words tasted like ash. That was always the plan. No, Jiho said, and something in his voice made her breath catch. That was never the plan, not for me. But the contract. Fuck the contract. His intensity bordered on desperate. I don't want you here because of paper and signatures. I haven't wanted that for months. I want you here because you choose to be, because you want this, want me, want us. Alana's eyes burned with unshed tears. How can I choose when I don't even know what you want? You bought me, Jiho. You orchestrated everything to trap me here. How do I know this isn't just more of the same, that you're not just saying what I need to hear to keep me compliant? Because I love you. The words came out fierce, almost angry, like they'd been trapped inside him too long. I'm in love with you, Alana. Have been for longer than you know. The contract was just an excuse, a way to have you when I knew you'd never choose me freely. But I don't want you trapped. I want you to stay, because you love me too. Her breath caught. You love me. So much it terrifies me. His thumbs brushed away tears that had started falling without her permission. Every morning I wake up afraid you'll realize what I am, a monster who manipulated you into this life. Every night I wonder if this is the day you'll look at me and see only your captor. I've been trying to be patient, trying to give you time to see that this isn't just obsession anymore, that it's real. I heard you, she whispered. Last week, on the phone with someone, you said when the 3 years end you'd honor the contract, that you'd let me go, that I deserve my freedom. Understanding flooded his expression. You overheard that? Yes. Alana. He pressed his forehead to hers. I lied. To whoever I was talking to myself, to everyone. I've been lying for weeks, telling myself I'd be noble and let you go when the time came. But it's a lie I can't maintain anymore. I'm not letting you go. Not in 3 years, not ever. I can't. But you said... I said what I thought I should say. What a better man would do. His voice cracked. But I'm not a better man. I'm selfish and obsessive and so desperately in love with you that the thought of you leaving destroys me. So no, when 3 years end, I'm not honoring that contract. I'm going to beg you to stay. I'm going to spend every day proving that you should choose me, that we're real. The words hung between them, raw and honest, and everything she'd been afraid to hope for. I love you too, she said, and watched his expression crack open with relief and joy and disbelief. I fought it for so long, told myself it was Stockholm Syndrome or trauma or anything except the truth. But I'm in love with you, Jiho, with your obsession and your violence and your impossible protectiveness, with the way you look at me like I'm the only thing in the world that matters. You are, he said immediately. You're everything. I'm pregnant with your baby, she said, testing the words. We made a life together. We did. His hand slid to her still, flat stomach, resting there with reverent care. And if you think that makes this complicated, you're wrong. That makes this perfect. That makes this real in a way a contract never could. What about the contract? She asked. The 3 years? Burn it. His voice was fierce. I'll burn it today, right now. I don't want you here because of that piece of paper. I want you here because you choose me. Because we're building something that has nothing to do with debts and everything to do with love. She kissed him then. Not desperate like after Busan, but deep and certain and full of everything she'd been too afraid to show him before. His arms came around her, holding her like she was precious, like she was chosen, like she was loved. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jiho kept one hand on her stomach. Marry me again, he said. Not because of a contract or your father's debt or any reason except that you love me and I love you and we're about to be a family. Marry me because you choose me. We're already married. That was a transaction. His eyes held hers, vulnerable and hopeful. I want a real wedding. One where you walk down the aisle because you want to, not because you have to. One where our families celebrate with us, where we make promises we both mean. His thumb traced across her cheekbone. Marry me, Alana. Choose me. Choose us. She should think about it, should be rational and careful. But she'd spent 2 weeks falling more in love with him every day, watching him bring her tea when she was writing, listening to him conduct business in Korean while absently playing with her braids, feeling him hold her every night like she might disappear. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. I choose you. I choose us. His kiss was answer and promise and celebration all at once. 5 months later, Alana stood in front of the full-length mirror in the penthouse bedroom, one hand resting on the small swell of her belly. 5 months pregnant now, just starting to show. The dress she wore was perfect, cream silk that flowed over her changing body with red embroidery that honored both Korean and Cuban traditions. Her braids were woven with white roses and red hibiscus, the flowers her abuela had worn at her own wedding. Mia, her father said from the doorway, his voice thick with emotion. You look just like your mother. She turned to face him, and the love in his eyes made her own burn with tears. She refused to let fall and ruin her makeup. Papa, are you sure about this? He asked, but it wasn't a real question. He'd seen them together these past months, seen how Jiho looked at her like she hung the moon, seen how she'd bloomed under his obsessive care. This is your choice? Not the contract, not the debt, but really your choice. It's my choice, she said firmly. I love him. He loves me. We're building a family. This is real, Papa, as real as it gets. He crossed to her, taking her hands. Your mother would be so happy. She always said love could grow in the strangest places. He squeezed her fingers gently. I'm sorry for what my gambling did to you, but I can't regret where it led. Neither can I, Alana admitted. Not anymore. Music started outside, a fusion of traditional Korean instruments and Latin guitar, another detail Jiho had insisted on to honor both their cultures. Her father offered his arm. Ready? Ready. The ceremony was held in the penthouse's rooftop garden, transformed into something magical. White roses and red hibiscus everywhere, candles glowing in the approaching dusk, Seoul's skyline glittering beyond, chairs filled with people from both their worlds, Jiho's family, including his mother who'd grudgingly softened after learning about the baby, Minji bouncing excitedly in the front row, Alana's extended family flown in from Miami, filling the space with Spanish chatter and warm laughter. And at the end of the aisle, under a canopy woven with flowers, stood Jiho. He wore a traditional Korean hanbok in black and deep crimson, but he'd incorporated a guayabera-style collar at her request, a nod to her Cuban heritage. When he saw her, his expression transformed, wonder and love and barely controlled emotion all visible on his face. Alana walked toward him with her father, and with every step she felt more certain. This was right. This was real. This was chosen. When they reached the front, her father placed her hand in Jiho's, then leaned close to whisper to him in English, "You hurt her, and debt or no debt, I'll find a way to make you pay." "I'd expect nothing less," Jiho replied seriously. "Then softer. But I won't. She's everything to me." The ceremony blended traditions, Korean bows and Spanish blessings, promises made in both languages, their families witnessing something that transcended culture and circumstance. When it came time for vows, they'd written their own. Jiho went first, his hands holding hers, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I promise to love you with everything I am, to protect you and our daughter, to honor your choices and your freedom even as I selfishly hope you choose me every day. I promise to be worthy of the gift you've given me, your trust, your love, your life. You saved me, Alana, made me human again, and I promise to spend every day proving I deserve you." Alana's turn. Her voice came out strong despite her tears. "I promise to stay, not because of a contract or obligation, but because I choose you. I choose this life we're building. I promise to love you, your obsession, your protectiveness, all the impossible ways you show me I matter. I promise to raise our daughter with you, to build a family that honors both our cultures. You terrified me once. Now you're home, and I promise to make sure you know that every single day." When the officiant declared them married, Jiho pulled her close and kissed her, not possessive or claiming like their first wedding, but reverent, grateful, full of love so obvious everyone watching could feel it. Their families cheered, Spanish shouts of "Felicidades" mixing with Korean congratulations, two worlds celebrating the impossible love that had grown from obsession into something real. At the reception, Alana found herself surrounded by family, her hand never leaving her small baby bump. Minji dragged her onto the dance floor for salsa music that Jiho had hired a live band to play, and she laughed as Jiho's sister attempted the steps with enthusiastic incompetence. "Your brother really loves you," Minji said, watching Jiho watch Alana from across the room. "I've never seen him like this. Happy. Human." "I love him too," Alana admitted, "even though I fought it for so long." "The best love is the kind we don't see coming," Minji said wisely. Then with a grin, "Also, I'm going to be the best aunt. Just so you know, your daughter is going to be so spoiled." Later, when the celebration wound down and guests began leaving, Jiho found Alana standing at the edge of the rooftop, looking out at Seoul's lights. "Happy?" he asked, sliding his arms around her from behind, his hands settling on her stomach where their daughter grew. "Deliriously," she replied, leaning back into him. "You did all this, the music, the flowers, the fusion of everything. You made it perfect." "You made it perfect by choosing me." His lips brushed her temple. "I still can't believe you're here, that you're mine, that we're about to be parents." "Believe it." She turned in his arms to face him. "This is real, Jiho. All of it. The love, the baby, the future we're building." "No regrets?" he asked, and she heard the vulnerability beneath the question. "About how this started? The contract, the manipulation, everything I did to have you?" She considered that, really considered it. The fear and anger of those first days, the way he'd controlled and possessed her, the violence and obsession that had brought them together. I regret the pain, she said honestly. The fear, the feeling of being trapped. But I can't regret where it led, can't regret falling in love with you, can't regret this. She pressed his hand more firmly against her belly. Our daughter, our family, our life. I'll spend every day making sure you never regret choosing me, he promised. I know you will. She kissed him softly. That's why I chose you. They stood there as the last guests departed, as the candles burned low, as Soul glittered around them in the darkness. Two people from different worlds who'd found each other through obsession and contracts and circumstances that should have destroyed them. Instead, they'd built something real, something chosen, something that looked a lot like forever. Come to bed, Jiho murmured against her hair. Our daughter needs her mother to rest. Our daughter is fine, Alana replied, but she let him lead her inside down to their bedroom, the room that had once felt like a cage and now felt like home. As they lay together in the darkness, his hand on her belly feeling their daughter kick, Alana realized the truth. She was free. Truly free. Not because she'd escaped or because the contract had ended, but because she'd chosen to stay, chosen to love him, chosen to build this impossible life. The cage had never been the penthouse or the contract or even Jiho's obsession. The cage had been her own fear of wanting this, of wanting him, of wanting a love that had started so wrong but somehow, impossibly, had become so right. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I love you, he replied, his arms tightening around her, always, forever, until the end of everything. And lying there with their daughter moving between them, with Soul sparkling beyond the windows, with their future spreading ahead like a promise, Alana believed him, believed in them, believed in forever. And that's the end of Alana and Jiho's story. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this dark romance, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more Afro-Korean romance stories. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What was your favorite moment? Would you have signed the contract? And what kind of story would you like to see next? If you want more content like this, check out my other stories in the playlist linked in the description. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.